Sounds good.
Good Friday morning. Welcome to this week's episode of Finding God in the Dark podcast. I am Don Stevens,
And I'm Jonathan Campbell.
and this week we are transitioning, even though it is technically today as we record is New Year's Day.
Yeah,
We are kind of transitioning away from the holidays and into looking at some of the films that are getting Oscar buzz this year.
yeah,
And the first one we have chosen to look at, even though we have seen some already
yeah,
this year that are will probably get
yeah,
mentioned later on. Um, but this week we saw Complete Unknown, which is the Bob Dylan biopic.
yeah.
It is directed and written by James Mangold, written also by Jay Cox. Stars Timothy Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro, uh, among others. The fellow who played, oh, what's his name? Wait, Boyd Holbrook played Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
He was great.
Yeah, they really nailed the cast in a lot of ways.
They wow, they did. And like we were just saying this before we started recording, like Timothy Chalamet just was completely the role.
I'm sh I was not shocked that Timothy Chalamet is the front runner for Best Actor. I wasn't surprised that Ed Norton is getting buzz for his supporting role. I was surprised that Monica Barbaro isn't getting any buzz for her role because I thought she was amazing as I'm blanking on her name. Joan Baez. I thought she was amazing, Joan Baez. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, now for those who have not seen it, or and might be interested, kind of the understand this is not an entire life story
Yeah. Yeah.
because, well, to be honest, Dylan's still alive,
Yes.
and
It's only
there's
it's
still a
only
story to
yeah.
tell.
It's only 4 years,
4 years.
and it's around him becoming famous, and then him. It's not a secret, so this isn't giving away a plot line because everybody knows it. It's actually one of the most kind of filmed, or not filmed, but one of the most documented times of his life is it's 65 when he goes electric at a big folk festival and kind of changes music in a lot of ways in America and really in the world. So, yeah,
Yeah, in fact, it's based on a book called Dylan Goes Electric.
yeah,
So it is just that 4 year period
yeah,
of kind of his rise to prominence and then kind of transition over into, and that's the climax of the film is really that Norfolk Folk Festival 65,
yeah.
um, Newport, not Norfolk,
Newport, yeah,
Newport.
Newport.
It's supposed to be Newport, Rhode Island, which, by the way, and when they're filming it, we're watching it in the theater. My wife and I
Yeah,
were watching it in theater. And there's this one scene at the hotel. It's supposed to be Newport, Rhode Island. It's
yeah.
outside. And I look in the background. I went, that's Cape May. Well, we looked it up. The whole film was filmed in New Jersey.
Oh,
All the New York scenes were filmed in Jersey City and Newark.
okay.
And the Newport scenes were all filmed in Cape May, including the Cape May Ferry, the folk festival, and the hotel. All of that was Cape May. So
Interesting.
the whole thing was filmed in Jersey. And
Is there
I just
anything?
knew, like I saw that building behind it, went, I didn't know the name of the building. I do now because I looked it up. It's Congress Hall.
Yeah,
But I just went, that's it. That's Cape May. I know that.
yeah,
So yeah, that was, and I think that kind of leads me into one of our kind of theological points,
okay.
at least one I picked
Yeah,
up,
yeah, yeah,
is that the film, if you don't know a lot about Bob Dylan,
yeah.
okay, this isn't going to answer all your questions. It's actually probably going to leave you searching for more answers. My wife and I on the drive home
Yeah.
we're doing a lot of, okay, Google, what about this? Okay, Google,
Yeah.
what about that? Like,
Yeah.
no, no, don't do that now.
Well,
Don't.
yeah, yeah. I mean, James Mangold actually heard an interview about him, and he took the tact of if you're not aware of Bob Dylan, I guess you've been under a rock for a while.
Right.
Um, but he is notoriously secretive about his life, about his upbringing. And when he first broke into the scene, he would change story. He was notorious for changing stories, adding details, and then doing different details. And so he has a lot of mystery around his life, and especially at this point. And James Mangold took the approach of, I think all we need to know is in the songs. And so he I was telling my parents who watched it with me yesterday that he did a album right after he got his first divorce called Blood on the Tracks. And he was really mad that people liked that album because he basically just poured out his pain. And he was like, "How can you like this album? It's just me in pain." And
Right.
one of the songs for years was just assumed was about his first wife, but he later on in life shared like his notes from all his writings, all his notebooks, and people learned that one of the songs on that album that everybody assumed was about losing his first wife was actually about losing contact with that first girlfriend in this movie. And so what was interesting is it seems like James Mangold just looked for things in his songs to connect to kind of explain who he was, which is an interesting way to do it. Yeah,
It's in and that's another thing that the character played by Elle Fanning in the film, Sylvia or Sylvie,
yeah,
Sylvie.
yeah,
Um, she is based on a real person, but they changed her name, and that was at Dylan's request.
yeah,
He said, like, don't use her real name, please, in this film,
yeah,
which is interesting. But what kind of where I was going was, it made us, want to find out more. Did he have kids? How many kids
yeah,
did
yeah,
he have? Was he
yeah,
married?
yeah,
That kind of stuff. And um, I think that when we start to get into the scriptures, we have that same sort of thing. Like initially, there's that mystery about it, right? Like, wow, I love this,
yeah.
but I want to know more. And it makes me want to know more. So I kind of, and please don't think I'm comparing Bob Dylan to Jesus. I'm not. Okay. I'm not. He's not in any way, shape, or form. In fact, a lot of places in this film, he's pretty unlikable as a
Yes,
person.
yeah,
Um, I'm not making that comparison, just
yeah.
saying that in a similar way, I think the scriptures and kind of getting into the scriptures makes us want to know more and intrigues us.
Well, I think your point is, I would kind of echo it, is great works of art. And I know that people get upset when you talk about the Bible as great literature, but it is great literature. Um, you know, there's always depths, there's always things to learn, there's always new points to reach. And there's a German literary critic that argued, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he argued that whenever you come to a text, you create something new because you bring your stuff to the text and it shoots it off in another direction. And so great works of art, great literature, you access it at different points in your life and you see different things because you've experienced different things and you're connecting into it in different ways and you find more nuance and depth to explore. And Bob Dylan is one of the greatest songwriters ever, period. It's just,
He's won a Nobel Prize for his
yeah,
for literature for his
sure.
songwriting. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and so he writes amazing songs, and you always have the ability to plumb those depths and learn more and explore different images or ideas or struggle with different questions. And that's what Scripture does. At its best, Scripture always leaves you with questions and wanting to explore more and figure things out and learn other things. And you can read a passage of Scripture 1,000 times and come up with new angles and new things. And so yeah, that's absolutely part of great works of art, great works of literature. There's something compelling in them that speaks to who we are as human beings. Yeah.
I mean, this is why we study the classics, right? This is
Yeah,
why we
yeah,
still read Shakespeare,
yeah, yeah,
etc. Yeah, and I just found that really interesting that there continued to be this mystery
yeah,
to who he was,
yeah,
and he really lives even to this day, as I understand it, still kind of lives into that.
yeah. Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
as much as he was loved and lifted up and put on a pedestal as this great star, folk star initially, but then kind of rock and roll star,
Yeah.
He doesn't, I don't think he really enjoys it.
No, the he's talked about like I said, he's last 20 or so years have has opened up a lot about his songs and his music, but he's still very protective about his life. And so he kind of hides that. But he talked about how like at this period of time in the 60s when, you know, the world was seemingly pulling apart at the seams and people were looking for answers, people would want him to give them answers. And he's just like, you know, I'm just like you. I'm right. I just have the ability to write these songs. There's a great line in the movie where he goes, when people say, "How did you write that song?" What they're really struggling with is why didn't it come to me?
Why didn't that song come to me? Yeah, I
So,
lifted that out too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's the one of the things that's always fascinating to me is geniuses. You know, people that are just amazingly gifted at something, and it's always amazing to just watch how they do it, and you're like, how does that happen? How are you so good at this? And you know, they didn't get into this at the movies at all, but about 10 years after this time, he has a conversion experience and for a time becomes an evangelical Christian. He's kind of backed off of evangelical Christianity, at least in the last part of his life.
Yeah.
But there are people that argue he wrote two of the best Christian albums ever written. You know, and it's just like, again, it's just he has the ability to write music and you give him a genre and he's going to write a great song there, you know, like in the early 2000s, he wrote a Oscar winning song for a movie. Like, you know, he just has that ability and it's something to marvel at. And I guess on some level deal with your jealousy around, you know. But that kind of gift is just it's one of those things to me that speaks to the magical nature of the divine. That you know there are people that are blessed with such talent that it just seems like it's supernatural. It kind of speaks to the power of a higher being, you know. And and I think they did a good job. Maybe they did it a little too much, but they did a good job of people just being in awe of him. Like, how did that come out of you? Like, like you're just screwing around, and all of a sudden you're writing one of the greatest songs ever.
Mhm.
That kind of thing
Oh, well,
is,
I mean, you could
yeah,
see it like particularly in some of those scenes in the folk festival, right?
yeah,
When he's playing,
yeah,
and then they show the people in the on the
yeah,
side of the stage, like Pete
yeah,
Seeger over there, and
yeah.
just like grinning from ear to ear. It's the first time I've ever heard this song, and yet it's the best song I've ever heard. That kind of thing.
Well, and one of the things I thought would be interesting for us to talk about in terms of theology and Christianity is the struggle in Christianity to what, as Methodists, we hold as the idea of personal holiness and social holiness, right? Because if you don't know who uh, Pete Seeger is, it's worth learning about him. But he spent his entire life trying to use music to propel social change and social justice movements around a ton of different causes. And he really hoped that Bob Dylan would be the catalyst to take that use of music to ultimate heights, right? And that's part of the tension of the movie is he wants him to do that. Bob Dylan, toward the end of the movie, gets much more interested in exploring his own personal reality. How does he feel about life? How does he feel about success? How does he feel about women in his life? And that struggle is a real part of a Christian's journey is how do you draw closer to God? How do you work out your own stuff? How do you explore your own issues? How do you grow personally and at the same time worry about the poor person down the street or worry about the injustice at the factory down the road? Like that balancing act is part of what we're called to do. And I don't know how you've experienced, but I feel like I've never found churches that do the balancing really well. They tend to be one or the other. They tend to be really into personal piety and helping people grow personally. Some churches are just weird country clubs, but we'll put them aside for a second. But churches that take the call of following Jesus seriously, I feel like you'll find churches that are really interested in helping people grow in personal holiness, and then you'll find churches that are really interested in people growing socially and in social holiness. But there's not too many churches I've found that have a really good balance.
But are able to do both.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Haven't I haven't seen it. I
yeah,
haven't personally experienced the
yeah,
churches that do that really well. Now, of all the, I'm going to brag a little bit. Of
sure,
all the churches that I have served,
yeah,
I think the ones that I'm serving right now are closest to it.
yeah, great, yeah,
And that's to me that's exciting.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely,
I think that they're because I can I can brag a little bit on all of the outreach things that
yeah,
they do and all of the personal, growth stuff that they do. So,
yeah,
they're trying.
yeah, yeah,
I haven't seen a church that does it really successfully,
yeah,
on both sides of the coin. But I tell you, I've preached it many, many times that, faith is a two-headed coin, two-sided coin, right?
yeah,
Like, and you can't just live on, you got to have both, you know?
yeah,
And it's challenging. What's interesting, coming back to the film,
yeah,
is if you didn't know anything about kind of particularly the folk music movement
sure,
of the 60s,
yeah,
you would almost think that, Dylan kind of created the protest song and then moved away from it, just watching this film, right?
yeah,
Like, because some of his early stuff really were kind of protest
yeah,
songs.
absolutely,
And then, when he gets electric, he starts doing something else.
yeah,
Whereas there was this whole, Woody Guthrie and Pete
yeah,
Seeger and Joan Baez. I mean,
yeah,
most of what they did
yeah,
were
oh
modern
yeah,
protest songs.
oh yeah,
So yeah, there is that interesting dynamic in the film.
yeah.
Um, you had something else?
No, I think that struggle is, it's part of the movie is that struggle between Pete Seeger wanting him to stay writing songs solely about social justice and social change, and Bob Dylan kind of going, well, sometimes I'm going to do that, but sometimes I'm going to write about my latest romance, and sometimes I'm going to write about the struggle to kind of deal with being successful and being uh, really well known, and I'm going to kind of explore myself, and that kind of reality. I think we have to do both, and it's hard as people to do both. Um, and it's really hard as organizations and churches to do both.
Well, and it's interesting here. I think the film comes at it from the perspective of an artist, right?
Yeah,
An artist, it's really sometimes that is the very definition of an artist, is that they cannot be defined,
yeah,
right? It's hard to put them in a box and say this is what they do.
yeah,
Picasso changed over the years, and
yeah.
authors changed their styles over the years. And Dylan in that same way.
And yeah,
Um,
and Dylan clear. I mean, Dylan's known as kind of the chameleon. Like it was almost like he would like. I remember I wasn't there, but like in '69, in the midst of kind of the hard rock Led Zeppelin era, he puts out a country album. Like it's almost like he goes like, I'm gonna sing when you sag, okay?
I'm
I'm
not
just gonna
doing
do
that. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, he loved doing that. It's almost you wonder if on some level it's part of his nature that he doesn't like doing what everybody expects. He likes doing what you don't expect. And he likes going places you don't expect him to go. You know.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm, like I said, in my relationship with my wife, she's a big Dylan fan.
Yeah.
I know his popular songs, the stuff that gets played on the radio.
Sure.
And yet on the way home, we had to put it on
Oh,
Prime Music and listen.
I made everybody in the car listen to Dylan on the way home. Yeah. It wasn't a choice. I was driving. And
So,
my second oldest son was like, he's like, is that Timothy Chalamet singing? I'm like, no, that's Bob Dylan. He goes, wow, Timothy Chalamet did an amazing job. I'm like, yes, he did. It's
He
funny.
really, really
In
did.
a weird way, this movie is a result of COVID because they were hoping to do this in 2020, and because of COVID, couldn't do it. And I would argue he probably could play as well as he can. He is amazing in this movie, playing and singing. And my
Plays and that's it. I don't think we
yeah,
said that. He plays
yeah.
and sings all his
Yes.
own.
He
Yeah.
does the harmonica, he plays the guitar, he plays the piano, and he sings.
Mhm.
And he learned all of that over the last 5 years. So, in a weird way, COVID probably allowed this movie to be what this movie is. Otherwise, if they do it in 2019 or 2020, my guess is we have a lot of cutaways and we don't see him playing, we don't see, all that kind of stuff. So,
Probably very true. What's interesting, there's another angle on this, not theological necessarily, but the director, James Mangold, you might know for directing another
yep,
musical biopic,
walk the line.
Walk the Line, which is the Johnny Cash story. Now, that's
Yeah,
interesting. Now, he's directed two films
with
with
Johnny
someone
Cash.
playing Johnny Cash in it,
Yeah, yeah.
which, is moderately interesting, at
There,
least.
there is one other thing I wanted to talk about, because I just found this fascinating. Because I actually want to check. So in 1965 in Newport, Dylan plays a short set and he electrifies. He plugs in his guitars, and the crowd just goes crazy. They throw things at him. It's almost a riot. I mean, it literally does get crazy. And I wanted to check the set list. They did 5 songs. They only cover 4 in the movie, maybe 3 in the movie.
They
All of
did
them,
three electric, then he went out in the film. They did
yeah,
three electric, and then he went out and he did one acoustic, and
yeah,
then they left.
yeah. He does 5 songs. I actually looked up the set. He did 5 songs. All of them are classics. Uh, all 5 of them are considered, or at least 4 of them are considered some of the greatest songs ever written. And so it does speak to this fact that nowadays people would pay money, probably thousands upon thousands of dollars, to watch him play those songs. And yet, when he played them at that venue, people literally were going to riot. I found that hilarious.
Wait,
Um,
let's see what those songs are. Newport Folk Festival, 1965, right?
it's
Uh,
like a Rolling Stone, which is considered probably the greatest rock song ever
which
written.
is which is the song that the title of the film is
Yeah,
taken from,
yeah.
right?
Then you have
Um,
Maggie's Farm, which is, and this is another irony. This group wanted him, Pete Seeger wanted him to focus on social justice stuff. Read the lyrics of Maggie's Farm. It's a protest song about workers being taken advantage of, about
mhm.
their employers. But because he plugged in a guitar and was playing it that way, everybody was screaming at him. So,
So he did Maggie's Farm. He did. I got a whole article here. Uh,
I know Tambourine Man, Mr. Tambourine Man was in.
Tambourine Man, roll,
Yeah,
like a Rolling Stone.
yeah.
Um, did he do Blowing in the Wind?
No, he did.
No.
He did Baby Blue, I think. And,
Oh, and the times they are changing, maybe. That's the
but
one they did in the film, right?
I can't remember. But what was funny is if you look up the set, I think there's 5 songs. 4 of them are considered some of the greatest songs ever written, and so it should humble us to remember that sometimes we need to actually take time with things when they're different and actually explore them because those songs were even the ones he played electrically are now considered to be some of the greatest songs ever written. And yet that audience couldn't get past the fact he wasn't on an acoustic guitar singing by himself. You know, um, to me, that's a lesson for all of us, but it's a lesson for churches because oftentimes churches struggle with new things. It's just a good reminder that check out the content, think about what's actually going on, even if it's presented to you in a different way.
And I've taken that. Now I haven't gone to this step that I'm
Yeah.
going to talk about,
Oh.
but it would be an interesting thing that I have seen done.
This Sunday.
Okay.
And
Not happening this Sunday, no. But a lot of people don't realize, like I throw this trick question out there, okay? Who is the best-selling Christian band of all time?
it was,
You too,
yeah, yeah,
okay? Because so much of what they write is Christian music.
yeah.
And you could literally build a worship service
Mhm.
around U2's music.
Absolutely.
Now, would people in the mainstream church in the United States of America freak
Nope.
out?
Yeah.
Yes,
A lot of them would. Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely would. But you could do it. Um, and it would not be, I don't think it would be dishonoring the church. I don't think it would be dishonoring God. I don't think, some of go and read the lyrics,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, at least two of the four members of that band are devout Christians, you
Well,
know?
I like to remind people that I think it's mid 1800s, in one of our general conferences, someone sabotaged an organ with sawdust because everybody knew the organ was the tool of the devil.
And right now, this church that I am sitting in, we're putting out a big chunk of money to fix our organ.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So I mean, I don't know. To me, I really thought about that when I was thinking, here are five songs that are considered some of the greatest songs ever written, and these people are screaming and yelling at him, and the only reason they're screaming and yelling at him is because he picked up a guitar and plugged it in instead of just picking up a guitar.
well, and that was part of him too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he was resistant to um, just doing what everyone expected from
Oh
him,
yeah.
right? Like
He
even today, from what I understand, even today, and he still tours today. He's
yeah.
82, I think.
A3.
83. Okay, still tours today. He does not just come out and play his hits.
Yeah. Oh
You
no.
know, he plays what he wants to play,
Yeah,
you know?
I went to see him in concert like 10 years ago, and it was pretty much all the new album, which, it's like, hey man, I'm playing the new stuff. So
I get it.
I was amazed to learn that he makes $15 million a year just from people streaming music to listen to him. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's well,
Talk
he
about
doesn't
passive
have to
income.
tour, does he?
Talk about passive income, man.
That'd be nice.
Ah.
We don't get to enjoy passive income, do we? Um,
GoFundMe
um,
page.
well, I mean, if the podcast took off and the
Yeah, who
whole
knows?
world, and I've said that to so many people. I said, will it be nice when we have our guest
Mhm.
on?
Yeah,
Yes, we'll probably have a few more people that'll be watching, but
yep,
is that going to propel us into the ad sphere and we're going to make money?
no,
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 I don't. Look, I said to my wife, there are two reasons I do this podcast. Okay, one, I like doing it.
yes,
I enjoy it. I enjoy talking with Jonathan and Evan when he's available
yep,
about movies
yep,
and about, the intersection of our faith and movies.
yeah,
Two, I hope that some people from my church will watch it now and then and gain something from it.
yeah.
That's it. You know, I don't need this to be anything more than that. To me, that's enough. you know. But anyway, we're getting close to time. I think we
Yeah.
wrap up the A Complete Unknown. Honestly, I could I don't think I can recommend it any higher. I
No,
think it's a great film.
yeah, it's an
It's
amazing.
worth seeing. There's here and there a couple things you might
Yeah,
find objectionable depending on your point of view.
yeah,
Um, you know, there's some unsavory language, but you live in New Jersey,
yeah.
there's lots of places you're going to be familiar with in this film.
Honestly, in a lot of ways, it's a highlight of his music. There's a lot of music in this,
It really is.
and they do it extremely well, like
There's
extremely well.
there is so much music. I mean, I don't think there's a scene in this film that doesn't have even just like him with a guitar and,
Yeah,
trying to pick out a song or something,
yeah,
it really is a ton of music. I don't know if they could put out a soundtrack album that would have all the music on it. It had to be 3 discs,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know. It's so much.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I don't think any piece of it was bad.
Oh
I
yeah, I really enjoyed
really
it.
thoroughly enjoyed this film. So
Yeah,
I think we both give it a big thumbs up. I think it's
absolutely,
well worth your time if you're so inclined. If the subject matter you find interesting,
absolutely.
I would
Yeah.
say go see it. So I have picked the last two films. So I'm gonna
Putting
put you
pressure
on the
on me,
hot
huh?
seat.
Putting pressure on me, huh? Let me think. Do we do? I'm gonna push myself.
Hmm.
Um, because I usually don't watch these kind of movies, but you're okay with horror movies, right? Sorry, did you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love horror films.
Okay, so why don't we watch Speak No Evil?
Speak No Evil.
Yeah,
Is that
have you
the
seen it?
that's the new one on is that on Prime?
It's on Peacock. I
Oh, it's
think
on Peacock. The one with James, what's his name?
yeah,
McAvoy.
James McAvoy. Yeah.
McAvoy. Sure. Yeah, I'll watch that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's kind of that's one that I saw the previews and that might be interesting when I get a minute, sit and watch it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I was kind of I'm like kind of want to see it, but I tend to avoid horror movies. I'm like I'll just force myself by telling you to go see it.
fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough. All right, so then we will watch Speak No Evil this week. Like I said, going forward, we're going to continue to look into some of the films that are, getting a little Oscar buzz. When do they announce the nominations? That's pretty soon,
Uh,
isn't it?
I think it's next month.
Okay.
Um, for the people from my congregation that might be watching, I am going to do the movie stuff again this year. So throughout February, we're gonna watch movies together, and then I'm gonna preach about them on Sundays. So it'll be fun.
Cool. So this week it is Speak No Evil, and we'll talk about it next week. And again, I'm going to keep lifting up that we're going to have a special guest coming
Yes,
up.
we are.
We are recording the end of January, so it'll be the first pod in February. And all of you get excited
Excited. Yeah, absolutely.
because we're pretty excited about who's going to be here with us. So
Yeah.
until then, friends, keep on finding God in the dark. We will see you all next week.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the Finding God in the Dark podcast. If you're enjoying these discussions, please consider hitting the like button down below or subscribing to follow along. We put out weekly episodes on Friday mornings, and we are so glad that you're finding this discussion of theology and film entertaining enough to follow along with us. Take care and God bless, friends.